Well, good afternoon, everybody.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Glad to see everybody. We are here for our Wednesday Q&A. We have the great Bryan Jones. Of course, I'm Richard Covington. We're glad that you've joined us. If you don't know what this is all about, every week during this Breaking Culture series, we've just set aside some time on Wednesday to have a little bit of a question and answer time from the message before. And man, I've been loving this series of Breaking Culture.
It's been fun,
and we've tackled some good things. I know we got some good things tackled ahead of us. But gluttony is what you preached on Sunday, right? And so my question is, why in the world would you choose gluttony to be a part of this sermon series?
I know. I asked myself the same question when I was preparing.
Now, let me just stop you right there. So I host from time to time on Sunday, you know. I didn't host this past Sunday. So I wondered if it was because of a little bit more heavy set.
I can't.
That you didn't want the gluttony.
I preached on gluttony, and then just full confession, we went to Cane's after. So, but I ate less than I normally did. So no, the reason that we chose it, I chose it, I guess. I just, I'd never really heard it preached on. And like I mentioned in the sermon, when we did the 21-day fast, I just thought, you know what, I can stop eating when I want. I didn't realize how much food actually controlled me. And I always thought gluttony was the idea of just like overeating. And I started to go, no, it's actually comfort eating when I'm escaping to food. Like if I had a long day, a lot of times I'll go, I'm just going to take some of the edge off. And, a lot of times people would say, the obvious things that are bad to take the edge off is like, drinking or pornography, or people speak about those things. But you don't think about it with food.
No, you don't.
In essence, that becomes the same escape that we have. And I realized that on again, when we did the 21-day fast, how much I was, escaping to food. Comfort food. So ice cream was my thing of choice. So I was just like, in this season when people's stressful, stress eating seems to be a common thing. That was really the reason that I wanted to do it. It proved to be a lot harder writing it because, I had this one idea, but that was about as far as I had gotten. And then when I started studying it, it just felt like, hey, this could be a good thing to talk about. But that's where it came from, is I've struggled with it and never really thought about it.
In your message, you mentioned stress eating, right? And so, and I'm a stress eater. And so that convicted me pretty squarely between the eyes on Sunday when I was listening to that message. And it comes to my attention of 3 trees, with 3 trees planning and all the business of 3 trees. We make a big joke around on our team all the time that we're just a bunch of stress eaters. And at 3 trees, we just stress. But I was convicted about that this week because it really is a matter of the heart, isn't it? It's a heart matter. And so, I
know you're not asking for a question. I wish I would have said this in the sermon, so let me pretend you ask a question and just give you this answer. But someone asked me, like, so what do you do with this? Like, because you hear this message and you walk away and you're like, so do I not eat desserts? Do I not touch carbs? That's not the point.
Right.
One of the takeaways from me after food, which we're not getting the subject of drinking, but take drinking to be the same way with this, appropriate drinking, not too much alcohol or anything like that. But the same way, that you approach, moderate drinking is how you should approach food, in that sense of you're not using it to escape. Like, I will never go try to eat a bunch of food when I'm stressed. I do it for celebration purposes. Like, if it's a great night and I'm not trying to escape, that's when I'll go have a dessert or do something. But when I find myself in a place where I'm like really stressed out and I'm going, I got to resort to the cabinet, that's the moment where I can invite Jesus into it. In some ways, what he's not looking for is legalism. He's not like, oh, you can never touch. He gave us great gifts, food being one of those. It's just, what's my mentality behind it? So it's really interesting. If I ever find myself in a place where I, am stressed out, even if it was in moderation or anything, I wouldn't touch alcohol. I wouldn't touch food at particular time, just because I don't want my mentality to be I'm escaping. It's always celebration. That's been super helpful for me. A real practical application of I'm just not going to do it when I'm stressed. I'm just not going to go to that place. I'm going to let Jesus be the God of all comfort, and I'm going to do these things as an overflow and abundance. So that was one of the practical applications I wish I would have said on Sunday, and that I just left it out. So.
Well, you got it in.
Well, here it is.
Sure,
Boom.
Absolutely. Well, I already told you the whole point about stress eating was a big conviction for me. But I also kind of glued into this phrase on Sunday. You said gluttony is disordered love.
Yeah.
And I think you probably just spoke to it a little bit. But for those who didn't hear the message on Sunday, first of all, I would encourage you to go back and watch it. It's on demand. But even for those who
on demand sounds so professional.
I know.
Check us out on your Netflix.
You can watch
your Netflix near
you. You can watch it anytime. Give us a little bit of narrative on that. On the phrase "gluttony is a disordered love."
I'll just full confession. I hated writing this sermon. Hated it. Some sermons just flow. I kept getting hung up because I was like, man, I just feel like this is going to be like. Everyone's going to say, oh, don't eat carbs and get into CrossFit. And that is just not what I was trying to get to. Where the message started to make sense to me in my mind was this idea of some book commentary I was reading spoke about the fact that you have to see gluttony like other things as a disordered love. And I mentioned it briefly on Sunday, but there's nothing wrong with desiring certain things like a home or a car. But that can lead to covetousness. A home and a car is good. Or there's nothing wrong with self-respect. Like we want people to have a confidence in themselves. If we're not careful, though, that good thing can become pride. There's nothing wrong with sexual desires. God gave us sexual desires. But those things taken out of context can then lead to something bad, which is lust. That's where, when I put it in that context of going, there's nothing wrong with food. But when it becomes escape eating or when it becomes eating my feelings, then food has in essence become something that is not good. It is a disordered love. It's disproportionate. And so that can be overconsumption of food all the way down to, like I was mentioning, escape eating, or even being super picky about food. Like I will only eat this elite type of food. There's almost this like, now food is an idol because I won't touch this, I won't associate with that. And that's honestly where I felt like that disordered love is just that idea. It is disproportionate. It has taken the place of something that it never should have been. And so that's where I would say the idea of gluttony really resonated, because again, most people go, well, I'm a healthy weight, or I'm, whatever. And your weight does not necessarily have everything to do with the subject of gluttony. I think that's the biggest misconception, that people just look at it and go, well, I weigh, a little bit 10 pounds over. Well, I probably struggle with gluttony. It's not necessarily true. You could have, genetic issues or other things going on, and vice versa. Someone could be a healthy weight and not be struggling with it at all, or struggling more. So,
what do you do? So a person may be saying, I genuinely wonder, maybe they're saying, I genuinely wonder if I struggle with gluttony.
Yeah.
Like, so what would be a couple things or one main thing that a person can point to, or kind of the test, if you will, to know if that's a struggle that they actually have or not?
Yeah. I mean, without repeating myself, I would say it is kind of what I mentioned before, like where do you escape to? Like,
right.
Where do you fly off to in your sense? Some people do it with TV and binge watching. Some people do it with eating. Some people do it with home projects, right? Like, it's crazy that home projects are up like 90% overall.
Yep.
Well, some people, they just don't know how to, they don't know how to deal with stress, so they just channel it all towards home things. Those aren't necessarily bad, like it's not wicked and evil, but it's in essence, what do you escape to? And I would say that's probably the first litmus test, as I would look at, is when you find yourself in seasons of stress, what are you running to? And that'd be the first place I would investigate. And that's where I got curious with food, and it was like, oh, dang it. It's true of me.
The scripture says that our God is a jealous God, right? And people have taken that out of context over the years, crazy. But the heart of that is that God doesn't want us to give our devotion to anything else above Him.
Yeah, totally.
Right? So really, our devotion needs to be centered completely and only on God.
Yeah.
And if our devotion is on Him, and then we're eating for celebration, then that's fine. But if we are devoting ourselves to food for something that only God can provide, then we're in danger zone at that point.
Totally. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Well, at the end of the message, you gave us an application, and so some of us today, several of us in our church, have dedicated today for a day of fasting and a day of prayer, and so I just want to talk about fasting for just a couple moments.
Yep.
So. Some people may struggle with it. They may not know how to do it. Some people say that when you fast, you shouldn't necessarily talk about it. Other people do talk about it. Yeah. Just kind of give us, some parameters based upon fasting, how we do it, when should we do it, should we talk about it, etc.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest confusion is around the idea of fasting and abstaining. So fasting in the biblical sense always involves food. So people will say to me, hey, I'm fasting and I'm fasting from social media. It's a good thing, it's needed, but that's not fasting, that's abstaining.
Yep.
And you need to do that. And people will say it for a variety of different reasons. Sometimes they go, hey, I don't struggle with food, or it's too much for me to give up with food. But you just have to call a spade a spade. When the Bible speaks about fasting, it's never, and he fasted from the influence of people, or he fasted from TV, or he fasted from the Pharisees. He fasted from food. It's always that idea. Most common in the Bible is the idea of fasting from sunup to sundown. That's what you see a lot of. There's different types of fast. We don't have time to get into all that. But, a lot of people, as I mentioned, they just think it's like an Old Testament practice and it's like legalism nowadays. But Jesus just implies that people would be fasting in the New Testament. Mark chapter 9 is one of the anchor points on fasting, that the disciples can't cast out a demon. And if you remember Mark chapter 9, I think it's like 30-something, Jesus has a haunting phrase that I think is so very rich for our culture. The disciples don't have power. And I think a lot of the church would say, I don't feel like I have spiritual power, right? Well, Jesus says this kind can only come out with fasting and prayer. So there's some things, some spiritual power that a Christian can only get through fasting and praying. Now, again, I get that there's medical issues that keep some people from fasting, so I'm not getting into that. Jesus sees the heart of it. But for the rest of us, there is a idea of fasting from food, drawing near to God, that unleashes a spiritual power when you fast and you pray. And the key thing is actually spending that time in prayer. Otherwise, you're just starving yourself from your point. You might as well just be going to do CrossFit regimes at that point. I mean, but you spend that time in fasting and prayer to draw on the power of God. The Bible implies that there is a power that you can't get from church, from life groups, even from Bible study, in the way that you can get from fasting and prayer. Now, that's a rich thing. And you struggle with the theological, and people say, well, it's biblical. If you don't have power, my first question would be, have you fasted and prayed about that subject? In fact, I have had things that I have tried in a community of people and discipleship groups. I've tried it in reading books on the subject. I could not break the struggle. I fasted and prayed, and I found a new power to overcome struggles I have never been able to come.
Love it.
So,
I love it.
So
when you fast, is it okay to talk about it? Can you tell other people you're fasting?
Yeah, I mean, within reason. I mean, if you go, oh, I'm so famished, I've just been in my closet praying. I mean, you got to use a little common sense, and I'm not saying that in a pejorative kind of way. I'm just saying, I mean, like I would let your close family friends know. Like my wife knows if I'm fasting, so she doesn't say, hey, I made a great meal today. And I'm like, get behind me, Satan. It's like stuff like that. But I would say let your close family friends know so they can be an aid to you. But I mean, I wouldn't go on Facebook and go, man slamming time with the Holy Spirit. I'm grinding it out. Just had a long session.
So hungry.
Just put an hour of work in with the Holy Spirit. We've got some good things going on. I mean, I wouldn't go to that extreme. But yes, I would bring your close family friends so they could be a support. Here's the other thing. If you tell someone, you're far more likely to do it. And so there are times where life happens and it's like, man, aren't you fasting today? Oh yeah, I am fasting today. And so I would say that I would tell a couple people, but I wouldn't post about it and wouldn't walk in and draw attention to yourself.
So accountability purposes,
totally, 100%.
It's helpful and good, right? Yeah. But just boasting about it, that's where you kind of cross the line.
So and that's probably a better way to say it. Yeah, accountability, no boasting.
Yeah,
way simpler way to say that.
Well, man, it's great. Thank you so much for talking today and answering these questions. I mean, I love this series. I'm excited to see where we're going to go in the next several weeks. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you tune in on Sunday at 9:30 and 11, and we will see you then.
And tune in tonight at 7.
Oh, yes. We're live tonight, aren't we? Thank you.
7 p.m. We're going to be spending some time prayer and fasting. You're love to see you in this room right here with us. If not, you can join us online. We'd love to see that. It'd be great.
Yeah, so on that, we actually have a 6 p.m. Family session, right?
It's going to be online only. Yep.
Online only. And then we have a 7 p.m. in our room.
Yep.
And then also online. So come on down to the church tonight. Join us online. We'd love to see you.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. Blessings, friends.